صلوا على النبي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا وسيد الأولين والآخرين بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتخبين المنتجبين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. Amma ba'd, my respected brothers and sisters, my elders and learned scholars, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I kind of have a tendency to just wing things because I like to feel the crowd. I like to know my target audience, and that's a marketing strategy, I guess. So, since yesterday, I've been having many conversations with the youth about youth leadership. Specifically in this day and age with regards to serving not ourselves, not our egos, not our own agendas, but rather we serve a universal mission, which is the mission of the awaited Imam Al-Hujjah Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Al-Sharif. And I'm going to ask you to do something which I know no one's really prepared for, but I'm going to ask you to think. And I'm going to ask you to imagine yourself in somebody else's shoes. And I'm going to give you the premise. And then, inshallah, with that, we'll be able to progress, move forward, and begin to see the world from a different light. Imagine a world where you are told that being a Muslim means being sinless. And imagine where every Maulana that came and went told you that you are not worthy enough because your hijab is not on properly, or the way you speak or the way you carry yourself at mosque is not correct. Imagine growing up as a child who has absolutely no understanding of what the majlis is, because the Maulana is a Hawza graduate who is speaking of subjects that majority of the adults have yet to understand and comprehend. And because you start to feel lazy and you just can't connect, you start to go outside and play, and everyone and their mother is telling you off and how bad of a child you are. And you begin to feel that you just don't fit in to this society, which is the only society that believes in the arrival of an awaited savior by the name of Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Al-Sharif. In this spiral of not belonging, you find yourself in an environment that your elders have absolutely no understanding of, in the sense that they grew up back home, probably, and they grew up with a different community of different values and a different perspective. They grew up in a community where everybody knew what everybody knew because everyone was cut from the same cloth. But you, on the other hand, are growing up in a society where you are a minority, within a minority, within a minority, where your hijab makes you the center of attack of bigotry, absolute ignorance, where you feel that you do not belong also. So you moved from one society which you felt you don't belong in to another society which you also feel that you don't belong to. And as boys, you grow up also feeling that you don't belong, whether it's your accent, and I don't mean the cool British accent which we have, Sheikh, wink wink, and Ahmad, but an accent that sounds somewhat like, hello, good evening, how are you doing today? And you just don't feel that you belong. So you want to fit in. And the dilemma that you are faced with is in mosques or in community centers or in the Desi world, even the Arab world, the rules are very, very straightforward and set in stone. You cannot go against anything that we already know. Whereas in an American society that is in itself forever changing and shifting and trying to find itself and explore, and moving from one day to enslaving a whole group of people based on their skin color, to then moving and saying we have equal rights as men and women, and now we have the whole, movement for equal rights for homosexuals and so on and so forth. America's forever shifting. And you begin to ask yourself, how do I carve me some of that cake where I too can begin to belong? And you look on the internet and you see hijabis in hip-hop dance videos as if that somehow means we will fit. Or for example, you see people rapping about Islam and taking a spin on Drake and whoever else is out there. And sometimes fitting in presents itself in a different way. It presents itself in being cool, in being gang affiliated or drug affiliated or club affiliated or whatever it is that's the flavor of the day, you have to be involved. And I guess what I'm trying to say to you is that we're living in an age where identity is always going to be questioned. Our identity as Muslims, as brown people, as Arabs, as Muslims and Shias, not Sunnis, maybe some of us are. But there's all these different identities which you have to try and grasp. And then one day you ask yourself, when someone says to you, why don't you become a leader? And you say, lead what and towards whom and for why? I have yet to discover myself. So, growing up in the West presents its own problems. But in the words of the late Ayatollah Khoui Quddasa Sirrah, he said that Islam is not a garment, one size fits all, but rather Islam is like the essence of life, which is water. In whichever container you place it within, it will take the shape of that container. Living in America, there needs to be a different understanding of Islamic attitude, but the same Islamic principles. You see, water does not change in its essence, it just changes its shape. Its volume, its substance remains to be water. So for me and for you as Muslims growing up in the West, when we want to become leaders, the first thing we have to understand is, who are we? We need to understand our identity. And in this ocean of confusion of different identities, we have to really boil it down to its simplest form. We have to look for the common denominator, that which unites us not only with a group of people and a sense of belonging to a social group, but to a purpose. And each and every single one of us here is a Shia, not by faith, but by following Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salamullah. If you can come to an understanding of what that really means, you do yourself a great favor, but you do us as a human race a great service. A Shia of Ali means to follow in the actions of Ali ibn Abi Talib, not just to simply say, I know Ali ibn Abi Talib, and I go to the majalis and I cry and I eat food and then I go back out and I'm searching for an identity. You miss the boat. Coming to a majlis is where you find that identity. It's where you discover yourself. It's where you find the attraction of what it means to be a leader. Man kuntu mawlahu, fahadha Ali mawla. A person who never once questioned his identity because his identity was always Ali. A shadow to the Holy Prophet, he learned from him. And if you want to learn from Ali, you have to shadow him. Like in every profession, when you begin a new job, it doesn't matter what you learned in university, what theories were discussed, and what processes and examinations you took. The moment you are hired by an institution, that institution has its own way of manipulating circumstances to its own benefit. And you have to shadow someone within that institution so that you understand how you should operate in order for you to fit in. And you have to shadow Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salamullah through the books. And I tell you this because I don't feel that I am actually qualified to speak to you about leadership or about being more religious or about being pious, because I myself grew up in a very rough neighborhood. I grew up in gangs and doing all sorts of things. And every time I felt that I had to hide myself from the people at mosque because they would always judge me and tell me that I was not worthy. But then in 2005, I'm in Karbala, in the heat of Sunni Shia violence at the time, and I don't like to call it Sunni Shia violence because in my belief, and what I've come to understand today, it was actually political violence, which the victims of were both Sunni and Shia. But I stood in the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salamullah for 1 hour. And I can tell you one thing, when we left, my dua, and I thank my grandparents for this, my grandmother said to me, before you leave, we drove in that war from Kuwait right to Karbala and back, only to be there for an hour. And my grandmother said to me, if you make a dua that is in the following. Oh Allah, if death shall overtake me, let it overtake me after I have paid my respect to Imam Hussein. Never before. And when I went to Imam Hussein alayhi salamullah, it was a real struggle to walk into that shrine. And my tears were not tears of sorrow for Karbala. It was the tears of a person who felt that he was unworthy. And someone handed me a book and he said, read the ziyarah before you enter. And I read that ziyarah, and that is what changed me from someone who's gang affiliated to being a speaker since 2005, August 22nd, which I consider to be my rebirth. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. O my master, Aba Abdullah, I know that I am not worthy to be in your presence, but it is your overflowing generosity that will allow someone low like me to stand in the presence of someone like you. And at that moment, when I began to cry, it was the tears of joy of someone who found appreciation. I didn't need to try and be a gangster anymore to impress my friends. I didn't need to try to speak eloquently to impress the people at mosque. I didn't need to be a Maulana. I just needed to be a Shia of Hussein ibn Ali, because when all else fails, there is only 14 people in life that you should try to impress. And if you want to be a leader in anything that you do, your leadership should only be to guide people to become followers of the Ahlul Bayt and not ourselves. And I say that it's Imam Hussein alayhi salamullah, but I don't want to take credit away from anyone. Actually, one of my greatest inspirations sits right here before us, and I still remember his first time I heard him was in Sakina Trust in the month of Ramadan, where he gave a beautiful story about Majnoon. And honestly, again, I use that example time and again, and I want you to use that example today, if I may borrow from your wisdom, Shaykh Hili, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to prolong his life and to give him more success. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Majnoon walks into the masjid or into a center and he's asking, where is Layla? And there is a person praying in that room, and he points to the door to the right, go that way. And Majnoon goes to the left. And again, Majnoon comes back again, where is Layla? The religious guy points to the right, Majnoon goes to the left. And this continues to happen a number of times. I have to exaggerate, Sheikh. Until the guy finishes his prayers, and then he looks at Majnoon and he says, may Allah have mercy on the one who called you Majnoon, for indeed you are a lunatic. Many a time I have pointed to you that Layla went this way and yet you ignore me and you go to the left. So Majnoon responds, he says, I beg your pardon. I was so engrossed in trying to find my Layla that I didn't even recognize you were here. But tell me, you were supposed to be engrossed in finding Allah. What made you notice me? And if you want to be a leader, be engrossed in the one that you love, Imam Mahdi Ajallah Ta'ala Faraj al-Sharif. Be engrossed in the idea that one day the world will be full of peace and prosperity, that discrimination will no longer have a place amongst us, poverty will be no longer with us, that each and every person will be judged by themselves, not by others, and on their own merits, not on the achievements of others. I don't know how these words of mine will benefit you in any way, but if they do, I hope they make you a better leader in everything that you do. Become the best student in your school so that when the Imam comes, he can rely upon intellectuals. Become the best salesperson in your company that you work for so that you have that bonus to sponsor events which educate people about the Imam. Become the best in everything that you do because you are the students and the followers of the best of Allah's creation, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And you don't have to think anymore, so I'll leave you with that. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.